A very good evening
Yeah,
to
hi,
all
good
the
evening.
participants. Hi, sir. Very good evening. We are very happy to have you, sir.
Yeah,
I will just give a small introduction about the event and the host college, and we can start the program in a few minutes, sir.
yeah, sure.
Okay. A very good evening to all the participants, architects, students, and academicians who have joined us today evening. Future of Architecture 2021 is a first of its kind webinar interview series that is organized. It started when the pandemic started in 2020 with three architects from Chennai speaking about the future of architecture. And this year we decided that every week we will interview an architect. And today we have come to the 12th episode, the final episode of Future of Architecture 2021. And we are happy to have with us architect Sanjay Mohe, sir. The event is hosted by RVS Chennai Padmavathy School of Architecture in association with Sushant School of Art and Architecture and also Manipal University, Jaipur. A small brief about the host college RVS Chennai Padmavathy School of Architecture. I can very proudly say that RVS Chennai also calls itself as the Alternative School of Architecture, TASA, because we believe that we have to change the way that we have been conducting education, and an alternative methodology is extremely important. And our ideology towards Alternative School of Architecture is always inspired and strives to foster diversity and create new ideas and allow students to have the maximum exposure and opportunities in our academic system. We believe our academics is focused on five strong pillars which we have established. The first pillar being the School of Change. School of Change is the pillar where every academic activity is altered and changed in order to be able to be practice friendly and make the students more innovative and periodically be able to ideate and develop new ideas. The School of Change works in a manner where each year is divided into five different wings. So a theme is established for every academic year. Year one being art, culture, heritage. Year two, social ecological resilience. Year three, technology innovation. Year four, focusing on urban planning and renewal. And year five on building materials and construction, which is smart and sustainable construction. So the five wings works towards creating this first and the most important pillar of RVS called the School of Change. The second pillar of strength is called the Live Project. The Live Project is a place where students go to a site and work as masons, contractors, electricians for around 1 month in their academic year and help in building an actual built form. So as you can see in some of the pictures, this is the live project that we have been able to complete. We've completed a 1,000 square feet senior citizens library at Surat in collaboration with Oro University. We've also been able to work with eco cottages at Tiruvannamalai. And this live project gives students an understanding of what is the difference from the drawing table to the site. So students go to the site, work with architects in actually building it. So they have to bend the bars, they have to take the bricks, they have to load the cement. And this process shapes their minds in a very young age into the architecture career and gives them the importance of the kind of respect that they should be showing laborers and the amount of hard work that it actually goes into any building that is being created. The third pillar is the vertical studio, which is a pillar that is focused towards the multiple MOUs and institutional collaborations that RVS Chennai has. So it is a student exchange program within the country conducted with many colleges like Sushant School at Delhi, Manipal University, Jaipur, Azadi College in Kochi, and many more. Basically, to solve, design, create new projects which are design solutions for the environment. So these are short term, around a week to 2 week long vertical studio design programs that are conducted with a student exchange program with various institutions across the country. The fourth pillar is called the SWS Summer Winter School, which is actually an architectural platform where students are able to follow their heart and passion. So they get to delve into other fields of design like fashion or product and other fields, and as well as be able to follow their passion in architecture like sustainable architecture or conservation and be able to choose their careers in a better way. So summer winter schools are planned for them to identify themselves. The fifth and the very important pillar, the future of architecture, is also a brainchild of this pillar, which is called the finishing school, focusing towards bridging the gap between academics and practice, the way academics is working, and the gap has to be bridged. So finishing school is conducted in RVS Chennai, where languages are being taught, where new softwares are being taught, industry partners are given lectures, and many other activities are undergone under this finishing school and making the students industry ready, be able to understand what is happening out there in the world and what needs to be taught to them. We also created something called travel theme studios, where every year in the first semester, students go on a travel, which is a very intense and a very rural based travel, from which their basic design and art studio exercises are successfully created. Kurunji, Mullai, Marudam, Neidal, Palai is the five landscapes of Tamil Nadu, and we have successfully covered four landscapes this year. And this year, we were able to conduct the travel theme studio on the topic of Mullai, which actually means forest and forest lands. And it is actually converted itself into a beautiful work of observation skills where students are taught about the importance of these lands. And this first semester travel orients them towards architecture as an element and gives them the more responsibility that they need. We have also can proudly say that we are India's first architecture college to start agriculture, and agriculture is a part of our curriculum from this coming year. So we call this agritecture, where architecture meets agriculture, and we have dedicated 2 acres of land in our entire campus for agriculture, so that we believe in 5 years' time, a student is becoming half a farmer and understands the pain that goes behind the importance of agriculture and what happens to a farmer and what is the process. We also were able to be a part of this life project with Proto Village in Andhra, where students had a sustainable lifestyle for 2 weeks, where they stayed in a self-sufficient community where there was no current, where there was no internet connectivity, but everything had to be maintained and made by them within. They had to cook their own food. And this 2 weeks of living also involved certain architectural interventions for this community called Proto Village in Andhra, with whom we have an MOU. And it is a great learning experience for students to respect and embody nature as an important part. All this has also helped us in kickstarting the project called Sustainable Nature Campus, where our college campus is going to be converted into a large nature campus. We believe it should be an architecture village in the next 5 years, where every kind of architectural material, the students can come and design them, they can build them, and also open to students from other institutions as well to come and experiment on different forms of architecture. And Sustainable Nature Campus is a place where we call the heaven, and where our entire campus of 16 acres is going to be dedicated for this project. And we are looking forward to create this nature campus. The quarantine has helped us to create something called the Quarantine Gurukulam, which is actually taking old methodologies of learning into the system during the quarantine. And this program was kickstarted as a night studio program and an in-stay program in our nature campus, where students and faculty stayed together during the quarantine and started exploring multiple ways in which they can learn from each other and ideate. So that all the details are available on our website. And the last venture that we've kickstarted this year is an exclusive space called the Center for Design and Innovation, where we are trying to create a triangle: architectural institutions, architectural firms, and architectural industries to come together. And this space has been created for architects to come exhibit their work, discuss, conduct workshops, and ideate in the city of Chennai. And this is a 15,000 square feet space dedicated purely for the purpose of developing and ideating and innovating. And that is a small brief about RVS Chennai. And today I'm really happy to have with us Sanjay Mohe sir. I think he does not need any introduction. He is quite known to all of us. But anyway, I think as an event, I would just like to say a few words about him. Architect Sanjay Mohe was born and brought up in Mumbai with the seed of architecture sowed in him early in life. An enigmatic personality, he is a graduate from JJ School of Architecture and went on to work with the likes of architect Charles Correa. Mindspace is the brainchild of Vaiki Prakash, Surya Narayanan, and Sanjay Mohe, which was established in 2004. And the firm has developed and won many awards, much beyond that we can all list down. And if I'm going to read that list, it's going to be a very long list. And today, it is not going to be a presentation of sir's work. It is going to be questions. And I'm actually so surprised that today we had more than around 120 questions from different people from across the country. And it took quite a lot of time for us to collate all of this. And there were some questions which were very, very interesting. So thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you for being with us today, sir.
With our pleasure.
Thank you, sir. So I'm going to start off by asking the question directly.
Yeah.
So the first question is, many people asked us, this is a question that came repetitively to us. Can you brief the story behind the name of your office, Mindspace? Why did you name it Mindspace?
It's about the space in mind, and mind the space also, both the things. Actually, some time back, we had one discussion with one of these music masters, and Mr. Dinkar Kaikini, and he was trying to relate, between architecture and music, and he said, there is a lot of similarity between, the structure of the music, the form of the music, the order of the music, and then he played one of the ragas, and we were all listening to it. And at the end of it, he said, can you guess what did you think when you listened to that raga? So one of the person was not an architect. He said, I imagined a kind of a palace when I was listening to this music. And he said, this is Rag Darbari, which is supposed to evoke that kind of emotions into you. It's about when you listen to it, you think about large spaces, it's like a palace. And that was quite amazing. He said, if a music can create a sense of space in mind, so actually this is what we try to do. Whether you look at a painting, you are creating a space in mind. If you are looking at a dance, you are actually defining space on a stage. So there is a strong connection between a creation of space, as an intangible element into mind. And I always wonder that if a music can create a sense of architectural space, can you reverse the order? And when you create a space, can you think about music? And that could be a very interesting idea. And this is some of we were talking about it, and this whole idea of Mindspace came in. So that's how this name came.
Nice, sir. Actually, that's a very interesting, way that the name of the firm has evolved. And thank you for sharing that story with us. And I'm going to go on to the next question. This question is actually very. It came in multiple forms, so we have taken one of the questions. What was your first job and salary? I think this is something that many young architects, the first job, how much am I getting paid? It's something that's bothering their heads. So, what was your first job, sir, and what was the salary that you got?
So I passed out in 1976. That time, most of the students were not yet born. So I worked with one of our teachers, Mr. Rajdan. So he had a firm in Bombay Fort area, and my first salary was 500 rupees, and that itself I was so happy with that 500 rupees. So you could do a lot of things with that 500 rupees those days.
No, I think, but correct, sir. But what is your also the opinion on, the salary, the first salary that a student receives? Because there is always this question, the comparison between multiple jobs. My friend who studied with me till school is now into IT and is now into another profession. And there is, what is the starting salary is a big question that, parents have, that, students also are having. What is your opinion about this first salary or the starting salary that an architect?
I feel it's a process of learning. No, I mean, when I feel your learning never stops, and every day you're learning something. So when you start your job, probably the first job, I mean, that's where you really learn to transform some of these ideas into a reality. And that's something which is so amazing that whatever it might be, a very small project given to you, you might be detailing a toilet. I still remember I had to design one toilet, and whatever I could, I had done so many things in terms of that entire three-dimensional space. So it's so much of an excitement to convert whatever you learned during these 5 years and make it really happen in reality. That excitement is something which is immeasurable, and that's something you can't put a limit of salary to it, how much you are getting. So I think it's the most important thing is to get into a right office where you learn the right way to do right things. Those are the values which you carry throughout your career, throughout your life. So that initial training, which happens even beyond these 5 years of schooling, is extremely important, and that's where that really gives you, a kind of direction towards your life in terms of generating values. Not to compromise on certain things, how to convince the clients, all those things you learn during that. So that value of, that 500 rupees is very large to me, because I learned so much, though it wasn't a large amount. So, but the difference between a professional and a non-professional, you take any profession, whether it is architecture, whether it is medicine, or being a lawyer, the period of that initial period of the learning is much larger. So that's the time you shouldn't be thinking about how much. You shouldn't be comparing with your probably school friend who might be earning 4 times more than you. But the moment you establish your practice, you become a proper professional. Maybe that might take a little longer time. It might take 5 years, 10 years. But after that, what you earn in terms of reputation, in terms of money, in terms of skills, that is much more. And you enjoy the process so much more because you are learning something every day and creating something every day. That's something which is of probably the most value.
Yes, but now you just said, as you were saying, that it is important for the students to go in for the right values,
Yeah.
right kind of office. And that is one of the questions. So I'm going to bring it up right away and ask, what do you think are the values that young architects, or the reason why we're saying young architects is basically there are so many institutions in the country,
Mm.
we can't do anything about them. And there are many young graduates coming out of them, which is also out of our control. What are the values that you think these young architects should possess? And what should they look for?
Well, I mean, eventually, you want to produce good work, and whatever work you do, you have to take pride in it. You have to really, uh, you know. So when I say values, it's something which you sort of bring it up right from your childhood. I mean, in when how you stand in front of your father, how you respect your mother, the way you take care of them. So those things, something which is not directly taught to you, but you sort of learn it through experience. You imbibe those values as you grow up, and the same thing you carry through in your profession. And those are the things which become extremely important. Not to compromise on certain things, how you treat people, how you respect people, and actually that whole process of it starts in every project when you take up a project, right from dealing with client. Uh, you know um, i i mean i'll tell you one of the talking about values. When I joined, I came to Bangalore and joined CNT. I had gone with Mrs. Chandavarkar, my that time boss. I had accompanied her to one of the meetings, and this was one of their old clients, and she stood there, spoke to the receptionist for 5 minutes, then went to that MD's office. It was a government thing, so outside that MD's office, there was one of these peons sitting with white that cap and white this one old man. She spoke to him for about 5 minutes, talking about his children, his wife, and then went in and talked to this CEO or MD in the same way. So there was no difference talking to either to receptionist or to the peon or to the MD. And those are the values that you take up, how you respect people. And that, knowingly or unknowingly, it gets reflected into your work. I can't give example how it gets reflected into work, but it does, because these are the values which you learn at your home with from your parents or in the office. And that's where you talk about integrity, you talk about not compromising on certain principles and the things that you value. So you fight for it, knowingly, unknowingly, you keep fighting for it. And then when it comes to a point where a client wants you to compromise, you say, no, I can't go beyond this point. And once you imbibe that into your way of working, it becomes a practice. It becomes, it becomes way of life for you. And then it sort of, you learn from your seniors and you pass it on to your juniors. And that's how the whole office sort of gets built up. And that's why each office has its own kind of a culture, the way of life, the way it functions, the way it behaves, and also, so it's all interrelated.
Thank you, sir. Actually, that's actually very emotional as well, because certain values that needs to be embedded, and I actually expected a completely different answer. But this value, the kind of respect that we need to have, is very important, and I think that the next generation carries such values, in a very important way. They give the importance to it. So I'm going to go to the next question. This is a question that came, and I've typed it exactly like how I got it. What keeps you motivated? The quote came in with saying, "I feel like giving up every time I'm in a competitive environment." And also, I've seen so many of your interviews, so many of your lectures, and you always seem to be a very bright. You always have a lot of motivation that happens and that comes out of you. So what keeps you motivated, sir?
Well, I think every project has problems, and there's nothing which you can't say that everything goes smoothly, because you are dealing with so many things. It's not like doing a painting or playing a music. You architecture is a process. It's a teamwork. You have to work with client, with consultants, with your fellow architects, with contractor, and finally we have to make sure that what comes out is as per your expectation. So during this process the problems are bound to come. I mean, there is nothing, you can't say that it's not going to happen. But I always have this image of climbing a mountain. You have a mountain and maybe there is one temple on the top of it, and then you start taking one path and you find that there is that path, there's some problem with that. You change the path, but still you are climbing up. There also there is a problem. So you take a third path, but still you are climbing up. So as long as your focus is clear, you know that you have to reach there. So in while climbing up, you're bound to have all these obstructions, you're bound to have all these problems. But if you start giving away for that just because of sometimes it becomes a personality issue, sometimes it becomes an ego issue, sometimes it's a technical issue, sometimes it's a financial issue. So you keep getting these problems, and actually, as long as you know that once it is over, you are going to reach there, and finally everyone will be happy once you don't compromise and try to do that. If you have that image in mind, the process becomes that much simpler. So there is you know that these things are more temporary phenomena. These are part of the process, but eventually when we reach there, everything will be forgotten, and everyone will be happy at the end. So what keeps you motivated, if you ask me question, is that larger image, what you would have dreamt about in the project, and you try to sort of stick to that and try to come as close to it as possible. Most of the time it's not possible to get it exactly the way you want to, because you are dealing with so many components, so many aspects. But every time the next project you say, I will come, you and try to come slightly more closer to it and bridge those gaps.
But again, like you said, the complications that arise on a site, or let it be with the client, can you give us an example, if that's okay for you, to elaborate on one of such situations where you actually felt like, because the person is asking, it's sometimes really a space where you give up, and you feel the pressure, you feel the stress, and it really questions your approach, and there are so many difficulties that comes along with it. So if you can share an experience of yours in such a situation to the students.
It happens. It's from smaller scale to larger scale. I mean, I would remember so many of things that suddenly, I mean, there was this whole project where it was all had a stone, that all the surfaces were with the stone, and then they removed the stone from it halfway through, and because of the time constraint, because of the cost constraint, and you would have done everything, and then you say that, oh God, what do I do now? And that's the point. You get very depressed. You feel like tearing off everything. Keep cursing that fellow who removed it. But eventually you sit back and say that, okay, this is what you have to live with. You can fight up to a point, and then you say that, and then you look at it from fresh point of view, and try to find how you find the answers to it. There was normally what happens with all of us, we tend to fall in love with the idea, and you get so much possessed with that you just don't want to come out of it. You don't want to. I mean, that's the beauty of it. You sort of enjoy being in that zone, and then So, so in one of these projects, we were doing this Unilever Research Center, and the first phase was over, and they wanted us to present the second phase. And we had done so much of work, and worked with I mean, that entire presentation was ready. It was presented to the clients, and he just didn't like it. He said, this had a lot of these meandering spaces within landscape and all, and says, no, it has to be absolutely compact building. I can't accept these kind of, and you feel shattered because you have put everything into it and you have actually lived through those spaces, and suddenly next moment it is really thrown out. And at that point you really feel that you can't proceed further. And I remember that I was in Bangalore and took a break, went to Bombay, and then came after a week. And during that 1 week, I was trying to forget, what was presented, and trying to re-question the whole brief right from the beginning. And probably we managed to come out of that, but you need that break. You need that time to come out of that zone and start rethinking in. And I think what we did as a next design, probably when I look back, I started liking the second one. So many times you begin to wonder whether you sort of fall in love with certain things without questioning enough. So there should be somebody to question you, somebody to sort of say that what you have done, it might be, I mean, you might be absolutely sort of convinced that, but is there one more way of doing it? And I'm sure there's always one more way of doing it. Sometimes it could also be a better way of doing it. So I feel it's not, I mean, it's very easy for us to get depressed about it, which keeps happening, bound to happen. But many times you can come out with something even nicer, something which you feel even more proud about later, looking back.
Nice, sir. Actually, thank you for that. Story that you shared, and I think everyone gets obsessed with this idea. I think it's also for the students as well, and also for architects, the importance of throwing an idea. And I think this led to the next question.
Yeah,
And I'm
that,
sure
I mean,
that this question.
no,
Yes, sir.
just one thing. I always feel it is probably the most difficult thing to tear off your sketch, your own sketch, and start with a fresh. Because
Yes.
the moment you, I mean, I don't know how many people sketch now, but I do sketch. So when you sketch, many times you fall in love with that power of sketch itself. The way the marker moves, or way that charcoal moves, and you start liking those lines. But you should have guts to tear it off and say that, okay, I'll start again. So that's important. Sorry,
Yeah, definitely, sir. Definitely. No, please. Yeah, I think the entire conversation is to know this side and discuss on things like this. And I'm sure the next question has come from your office, I think, because it talks about something very very close to you. How often do you take a break to think? That was a question that we got, and I thought that was a very essential question that I should definitely put in today's panel. So, how often do you take a break, sir? Or do you generally not take a break at all?
No, I personally, I don't believe in taking break, but that pause is very important, I feel. I mean, I have mentioned it so many times earlier as well, that that when you are drawing something with a pencil continuously, and then you take a pause for sharpening the pencil, and during that pause, somehow when you are not thinking about solving something, you just take that pause. And most of the time, during that time, a great idea comes in for some reason. I don't know why. Even earlier, when I was in CNT, I used to work. My studio was at a lower level, and the toilet was at the upper level. So you had to walk through some of these, the outside courtyard, walk under the tree to reach the toilet. And I always thought that I would be working on some design with full focus. Then you leave the pencil and you just walk under that tree for 5 minutes, not 5 minutes, just about 2 minutes, going up to the toilet. And by the time you come back and sit on a table, you would have actually got the answer for no reason, and you're not even thinking about it. So So somehow I feel your brain needs that kind of a rest. It needs that pause. So taking that break um, is important, and that's the time you when you are doing something mundane like this, we are taking a bath, and suddenly instead of thinking about I have to reach office and I'm getting 5 minutes late, instead of that, you just feel the water falling onto your body and be in that present moment. Most of the time, I think that great ideas happen during that time, during coffee breaks, during it's not. We always talk about these uh, planned encounters against chanced encounters, and planned encounters which happen into boardrooms and conference rooms, and chance encounters which happen around coffee corner, or when you're just sitting and watching somebody playing and all that. And those are the times which tend to be more creative in terms of generating ideas.
Oh, thank you, sir. Actually, I also wanted to ask about this. So it's not like a question, but when everyone thinks about Sanjay Mohe and Mindspace, it's all about sketches. So I wanted to know, have you sat on AutoCAD and done the drawings and done the grunt work? Because that is something that I everyone directly connects you to a sketch that you do, and the building comes out magically. Like the video that we did ourselves, there's a sketch and then there's a beautiful building. But what about the grunt work? Have you actually sat down to do the grunt work? Do you still
Yeah,
handle such work?
yeah, you are making me feel very illiterate actually, because
No, no, no.
because
I'm just
I
saying
never
the
do
honest.
I never do AutoCAD drawings and all, but there are these talented people sitting around me. They they keep doing it. I still keep the square and set square on my table, which looks like absolutely outdated gadget. So most of some of the students would not have seen what T square looks like. But I do work with that, and I use a lot of iPad. Do a lot of sketches with iPad and use iPen to use that. And now there are some of these apps, like I use Trace quite a bit, which sort of converts sketches, and you can draw it exactly the way you would use scale and tracing paper, and it's very, very easy to. So somehow I knew that there would be a time where these guys would come out with something sketching friendly softwares, and which has come already, thankfully. So I've started using that rather than
No, the
sitting
question
down.
there is also the grunt work. Generally everyone always wants to be this. The architect who's very interested. But before all, just you're sketching and you're creating new ideas. But there is a lot of grunt work that you not AutoCAD specifically, but you would have sat and you would have had to issue so many drawings. There's a lot of grunt work that you would have definitely done.
I mean, we have done lot of drafting. I have done enormous number of perspectives, and this is something, again, I had mentioned it last week in one of the talk, that during our time, we didn't have a luxury of all these softwares where you can walk through the building and see the whole all the spaces. We either had to do a physical model, or make it, try to visualize it through plan and sections. And the third thing was to do sketches, but the sketches won't give you real confidence that is it to proper scale. And also we used to do these perspectives with method, taking two vanishing points, a picture plane, and you cut the section, and then uh, try to take every point from the plan and build up the entire perspective. And when you do it methodically, and you take a station point which is so many meters away on plan, and after we would do that perspective, we had done this exercise where after the building is over, you go stand there and take a picture, and it would be exactly the same, because it's a mathematics, right?
Yeah.
It's the rays which are radiating from your eye, and you cut it at a point, and that becomes a picture plane, and that's where you freeze that drawing. So it's the exact method through which you learn. And so I would have done thousands of perspectives like that, and continuously would be for every, just to get a confidence that because even after doing a physical model, to actually go through the spaces, you really have to, bend down, go through it, put some mirrors inside to check it and all, which we used to do. But eventually, the whole idea is you look at plan, you look at section, you close your eyes and imagine the whole space. And you imagine walking through that entire building, closing your eyes. And that was the best thing that you sort of had to. I mean, our generation had to develop that skill to visualize that entire process of imagining the things. But now suddenly, when all these softwares came in, first time when I started looking at this, I mean, earlier generation 3Ds and all, and now we use SketchUp quite extensively in the office, and you suddenly feel that life has become so easy. You just draw plan and section, and you can see that entire space exactly the way it would be. So so this earlier process of just visualizing all the spaces just by closing eyes, that was much more interesting. I feel it was difficult, but it was more challenging, and you would keep getting surprises as the building unfolds, as the shutter comes in, and you're not sure about how much light would come in, how much reflection would come in. Sometimes you would imagine the space to be slightly larger than what it would be. So all that one had to go through, but it was fun, and I think and as an exercise, I think every student should try to do that. Just try to do plan elevation and imagine the entire space by itself, not even going through all these 3D softwares and all. Actually, it's almost like a training yourself. That's all.
I think it's like recently we had a conversation with an architecture friend, and there were two renderings, visualizations, and one was a 4-story building, another was around a 14-story building, and both look very similar in the render. It's just the angle, and it looked like the 14-story building was so tall. So I think they were also surprised, and I think we also had Balakrishnan sir last 2 weeks back who was talking that the client had liked another architect's render, and they built the building, but it was completely different from the way the rendering was because of the perspective and the skew that it gives. But I think this is an essential skill. And guys, I think many of you asked. So yeah, Sanjay Mohe sir has also done a lot of grunt work as a junior architect, and has
Pramod
definitely
will
done.
agree with me, I'm sure, what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
Pramod sir was definitely saying that I don't do renderings at all because I think I have other ways to say. But he was just saying his experience about how the client came back. So that's actually very interesting, and I think that's also a lesson to be learned, that this visualization is actually a very strong, important characteristic that an architect needs to have within himself. I believe, because this 3D is becoming a tool, and we look at it, students using it extensively, so they don't really sit down to think probably sometimes to experience the space. So it's actually nice. So thank you for that. Giving us a sneak peek into that about you doing so many perspectives. So next question is something about an office culture that we came. What is your opinion about working late nights in offices, through the night, late nights?
Well, I mean, at least in our office, it just happens without without telling anyone. Somehow in Mindspace, I have to shout at all of them to go home. They won't go home till I shout, enough, guys, enough now. You come tomorrow and work. You have to sort of tell that. So this is something which when you are thoroughly into what you are doing, you sort of forget what time it is. So many times when you are enjoying the process, rather than being forced to work on something, you tend to forget the time, and then that sometimes it becomes late night, though the intention is not to close office early, but most of the time, at least in our office, we end up somebody or other working late. But when there is a presentation and when you have to really submit something after 2 days, after 1 week and all, then that particular week, normally it's pretty busy. Somebody making models, somebody doing 3Ds, somebody doing walkthrough, and that is a lot of excitement actually. I mean, this is something which which you treasure. When we did it, maybe 15, 20 years back, 25 years back, I remember every moment of that, because there's so much learning which happens, there's so much questioning which happens, you learn from each other. And that's the most exciting part of architecture, I think, to sit late night when there are presentations and see that whole scheme coming up. So slowly those vague sketches and all becoming all into turning into walkthroughs and renders and all, and that's a great excitement.
Yes, sir, definitely. So the next one is mostly I think it's from a very young architecture firm who asked, how do you think a new architecture firm should pitch for work in the current times?
Well, I think pitching for work, somehow I don't that instead of saying that, Mr. Doshi had put it very nicely, and he said, if you have a great idea with you, can you give it to client? If you have a great dream with you, can you give it to the client and make it his dream? Now that's a wonderful way of looking at it. If you have a great idea, you have a great dream, try to make your dream as client's dream. And if you can convince that to the client, then you don't have to do anything different for pitching for the work, because you are making him, you are sort of uh, charging him up. He gets so excited with that idea that he said, let's do it together. And if we can do that, then that's a wonderful way of doing it. So when you say pitching, you think about money, you think about so many other things. I feel it's more about motivating somebody to do great work. And if you can manage to sort of generate that energy across, and I feel it's about working together as one team. And as I was saying, architecture is a team game. And instead of sitting across the table that you are a client, you are a consultant, and you are an architect, instead of that, if you motivate the whole team and work like one, it's like our project, it's not yours and it's mine. So, and take pride in it, that whole thing becomes very, very different. So try to, I think another problem when you start in the beginning, to gain confidence. I mean, every client wants to feel safe when he gives a job to anybody. He or she wants to know that whatever he has imagined, you should be able to deliver it. So for a young architect to do that, initially you have to have some work to show. So it could be a very small work. It could be, you might have designed probably a chair or a table, but if that has that quality, which can transcend the thing, and if it can say that it has that quality to stand on its own, then confidently you can say that if I can design this table to such perfection, I can do a larger project as well. So you should be able to have something to show to gain that confidence, because each one wants you to deliver those things in a right way.
No, definitely, sir. I think this take on bringing the client together in along the process is essential. Again, the times are very different. The context comes from a place where young practices are questioning. They are also sometimes being exploited by many clients. They need to provide renders. There are some firms who, even wrote to us today saying, should I do renders in the first presentation that I'm taking to my client? Should I do costing? There's so many doubts amongst these young practices about what happens in that first meeting, or how do I actually get a work. So I think you've rightly put it. And if you'd like to add something into this, market space that is being created for young architects.
Well, I think beyond these renderings and beyond this, I think it's about that larger idea that you have to convince the client to it's one thing is if he's asking for 2 bedrooms, just to give them as 2 bedrooms. But if you can elevate that and bring it to a certain level, and it says that it's not just a place of living, it's about interacting with the family and take it to a larger level. Actually, I feel that things begin to change. It's about, because I feel by nature, nobody wants to exploit anybody else. I mean, there will be some people who would do that. I'm sure that happens, but 90% of the people are good people. That's what I feel with my experience, and they have good intentions. So if you also have a similar intentions, and if they know that you will give in your 100% to make that project work, if that confidence somehow, if you can convey that to the other person who is sitting, I mean, who is going to allow you to do something which is so precious for him, probably, then that's what the thing is. But once you do a couple of projects, and once you have something to show, it becomes so much more easier. That starting it is always a problem, that each one of us would have gone through it. So, and each one has to go through it. There is no shortcuts for it. So certain amount of exploitation would happen. You have to be prepared for it. Those are the days one has to work very hard. It's not that later on you don't stop working hard, but those are more harder times.
No, definitely, sir. And the next question is also on the same lines. There are so many young practices that are popping out of each city. How do you see that, as a competition or as a complication? What responsibilities does senior architects have towards creating this architecture fraternity that is growing enormously in terms of number?
Well, I mean, so are the buildings as well. No, I mean, you see so much of growth happening all across. I mean, you go to any new place. If you go to Hyderabad, there is, you see these huge, enormous structures coming. All like same thing happening with almost every city. So there is I'm sure there is place for everyone, and there is a niche for everyone. I feel that one has to know what that person is good at. It's not necessary that I mean, that architectural education is such a wonderful education that you know how to handle a small object as well as a larger space. So that gives you that dexterity, that gives you so much of option. You could be a designer of a smaller object, or you could be a designer of a larger space, taking light and air into it. So you could be designing a door handle, or maybe even a wash basin or whatever. So there is a scope for everyone, and one can. It's not necessary that everyone has to end up designing, big buildings and all. You could be probably designing wonderful door handles. Paulo Soleri used to make these wonderful bells, wind chimes actually, and he actually sort of wanted to sustain his practice also selling those wind chimes. So there are different ways of looking at it. If you look at it positively rather than looking at it as a negatively and say that so many people coming in and there's so much competition, I don't think so. I mean, if you are good at something, and if you should be competing with yourself, and that's one thing which we always learned through all these years of work that you don't try to look at a person and compete with the person sitting next to you, because that's something which is not going to help you, because you are a special person. You have been brought up in a certain way. You have your own values. So don't compare yourself with somebody else. Compete with yourself and find out what is good in you, what you love doing, what you enjoy doing, and try to pursue that. And you will find, and there will be a niche for you, I'm sure.
Definitely, sir. I think thank you. That's a fantastic. Compete with yourself and finding the niche for yourself. It's very essential for students, and also, all of you don't. There is a lot of more scope in the recent times in multiple fields of design, where
Yeah.
architects are required, and can
Yeah.
definitely turn out to be something very exciting for students as well. So I'll go on to the next question in connection to the amount of buildings that are coming up in the country. On one side, we see a lot of innovations in sustainability and buildings that profess that, which are very sustainable in nature, which are very climate responsive. But parallelly, there are also buildings which are non-contextual and excessive that are being built exponentially. The glass kind of towers that's coming up in a very high number. The ratio between both these buildings don't really match. It's 1 in 10. How do you think we can handle this crisis that is constantly developing and evolving?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the advisors to some of these builders and all. I mean, these guys come from some of these management firms and all, and for them it is only about making money. It's only about for them, good architecture is one nice rectangular box, which has a large grid of some 10 meter by 10 meter columns, uh, and which you can sell it to the client. Whether light comes inside or what is the depth of that box, they are not bothered about it. The cleaner the block box, the service core is properly placed in the corner, they feel it's a great architecture, and that's what they want to promote. And that's the most unfortunate part of it, because the moment you try to do something, I mean, even during this pandemic, there was so much need to connect with nature, to have a place where you can step out, connect with, whether you are on 10th floor or 15th floor, wherever you are. But if you can design a building where you can do that, uh, these are the ideas which we have to forcefully convey to the clients, who are getting just carried away. We carried away by these management consultants, and these are the people who say that we will sell it for you. If you have one corner cut, you will not be. It's not an efficient plan. They won't know that even if there is a garden outside to step out because of that cut in the plan, and it makes it so much more efficient, they don't understand that language. So first thing is to get sensitive architects or sensitive designers who would advise these builders, who are totally dependent on these marketing guys. So we have been going through. I mean, we face these problems all the time. The moment you try to do something different, when it comes to more in terms of office spaces, commercial spaces, we keep fighting about it, and somehow try to convince them as much as possible. Uh, so that is the problem, and which as an entire professional community, we have to create awareness across. And this putting this glass towards the western side and south side, it's absolutely criminal. I mean, you are creating these, they're just guzzlers of energy. And then they put curtains down, and then you these blocks are so deep that there'll be so many cabins, and you don't know whether it is raining outside or whether there's sun outside, and it's not good for an individual. It's because your bio clock doesn't coincide with whatever is happening outside. So all those problems are there. One has to have. I mean, it's about educating, creating that awareness across, and all of us are fighting for it. We try to talk about it wherever possible. Uh, but yes, and it's not only in India, it is happening across.
Yeah, definitely, sir. I think this crisis is something that we've spoken to all the architects who came over in Future of Architecture, and all of them have conveyed the same regret that such a thing has happened. And we really, it's just like, the entire place is caught on fire. This kind of a glass culture has created a very, we really don't understand why we have so much glass as well. But again, the next generation, next set of architects who are coming up needs to be really sensitive. And we believe that such discussions can help them understand that it is not the right thing to do the way forward.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, so there are many countries as well who have taken very strict stance towards sustainable, measures in architecture, the kind of standards that they do. So do you think such a practice for the entire nation or for each state in the regulations that the government mentions itself can definitely make a change? Because they are the ones who are deciding so many things, the government and the government buildings that's coming up. So if there is a possibility.
Yes, I'm sure. I mean, slowly that awareness is coming in, and there are people who are talking about green building sustainability. Though, how it is implemented is a different thing. But that awareness is coming in. That is for sure. Even in the case of housing, you will find a lot of these sensitive builders who are understanding the importance of sustainability and trying to bring in all those elements into the development. So these things are happening, but it's a slow process, and one has to fight, because many times these in terms of economics and in terms of their profitability and all those numbers are so different that as an architect you have a very little role to play when it comes to these numbers. And so many times the economics sort of decides a lot of things in terms of how dense you make a development, how many, that FSI is going to 4 and 5, and that whole human element, which is so fundamental to every city, is slowly getting lost because we are building so much on such a small space, on the name of that, making it, economical. But it's not necessary that building more on a smaller site, it becomes economical. In fact, we have to pump so much of water up, so much of energy. Instead of that, maybe even if you go a little away and spread out and make it more human development, that's something which is much more positive thing to do. But
No, definitely.
but somehow this new trend which is happening in almost every city to increase that FSI, but slowly, yes, and slowly these spaces are killing the space really by creating these concrete jungles. And even when you are asked to do something, you really don't have solution. I mean, we are working on some of this 1 or 2 projects where when you are asked to do FSI 4 and 5, I mean, what do you do? And the answer you get is, if it has to be, I mean, in terms of economics, if it has to work, you have to build so much. So I don't know, but every architect will be forced to do that because that's the bylaw. That's government wants you to build that much, and that's something which is which all the builders are grabbing that opportunity and trying to put so much of mass onto that site, which is terrible.
Yeah, I think, but again, like you said, there is a lot of hope and there is a lot of discussion on such topics that's coming up regularly, consistently. And we hope that, this awareness and sensitivity spreads more.
Yeah.
The next one is something that, we have just a few more questions to go. The next question is, many masterpieces of architecture across the country are being brought down and redesigned under the blanket of beautification. How do you look at it, sir?
Well, history has to be respected. I mean, it's not that every building has to be preserved, but there has to be some kind of a benchmark, because when you look back, you should have your, you should see your history in terms of landmarks, and those should become a reference points for you to see how that entire civilization sort of, grew. And these are important things, but it's not necessary that every building has to be, but we have to really make sure that to find out what are these important things, because commercial value of each space keeps going up and it is bound to happen. So we have to, and we have to make sure that whatever we preserve, it is kept in a perfect order. Many times the things get dilapidated, it's leaking, it has to be propped up, and so there has to be a whole system of how you preserve that heritage. How do you preserve this? Even the buildings which are 50 years old or 60 years old, whatever, they have to be preserved in a right way. It's not just keep it for the sake of keeping. So we have to respect the history. We have to keep it, but there has to you have to have efforts to sort of make them work also effectively.
No, definitely, sir. I think that's perfectly said. And I also visited many of the buildings, done by Corbusier and many other architects across the country, which are not being maintained well, probably not even being used, put to the right use. Even in Chennai, we have buildings which are quite historic but still not efficiently used. And when there is no program that is added to it, no function to it, it becomes really something that it doesn't have any need to be maintained. So I think that culture needs to definitely change. Now, this is a question that's talking about the global scale. Yes, sir. Yeah, please.
No. I mean, many times you might have to redefine the functions, like you say, the Corbusier's building or whatever. No, I mean, if you redefine certain functions and make it work, it would be much more nicer place, rather than just keeping it as a as a something to be preserved and should not be touched kind of thing. I mean, I don't think so is the right approach.
Yeah, definitely not, sir. I think that is something that we need to definitely rethink, and a lot of rejuvenations are also happening. So we're going on to the next question, which is talking about the scale of architecture and India's impact. So with such a vast history of architectural wonders in the country, I mean, through the centuries, India has been having so many different architectural, even in modern architecture. Why hasn't India been able to establish itself on a global scale in the field of architecture?
I think, don't we have to blame ourselves for it rather than blaming somebody else? We have to take pride in what we have. We have to be sensitive to what we have. Instead of looking at West and wait for them to appreciate what you have and say, you wait till somebody from the West says that, oh, this is a good building, because they say it becomes a good building. That's not what we are. No, I mean, our culture is different. We are different. Our values are different. So we have to know what is good for us. We don't have to wait till other person appreciating it. So we have to encourage each other. We have, if some other architect doing great work, I mean, just celebrate it, push him up. And that's what they have been doing in the West. They push each other's work and then bring it to the level where they respect so much about, create that respectability for each other. So that is somehow it doesn't happen in our country for some reason. If we have to encourage each other and elevate it, only then somebody from outside would come and start appreciating your work. So I would squarely blame ourselves for it.
No, correct, sir. But also on a global platform and Indian firms, the kind of structure and the kind of organization we have, do you think there is something that we as architectural practices also need to have, or something that we miss? That definitely it makes it difficult for us to be able to reach that global platform, the global scale that is generally out there. Do you think that our Indian architecture practice needs something?
No, precisely, I'm saying the same thing. Unless we respect each other and say that we are doing great work and we don't have to, don't need somebody else to appreciate that respect would come in, no, which is probably not happening. That's what I feel. I mean, even if you see in Sri Lanka or in Bangladesh, I mean, there is people there, the architects who are doing such nice work. they have been recognized, they have been respected within the country, and therefore you start respecting them as well. But does it happen other way around? It's not happening, I feel. So it is purely because we ourselves are not creating. For us, it is still only Korea and Doshi, So we feel, I mean, they are absolutely, for me, they are gods, but still we have just stuck to only that. And I mean, there are so many others who are doing great work. I mean, they also have to be respected. They also have to sort of, uh, come to a level and say that we are all doing great work and let's take pride in that. There
No,
might be
definitely.
certain amount of professionalism which might be missing in when the way kind of we do the work, but that's because of the systems that we have. That's because of the kind of need that we have within our country.
True. I think if we elevate the kind of interactions that we have, especially the kind of, there is a big lack of architectural criticism as well in the country. There is no criticism. There is no positive discussion about what is required, and I think that openness also needs to be there for us to grow together as a community, on a national platform to be able to interact. And
Absolutely. I
that
think
has
you
always
put
been
it
something that we've.
no, absolutely, you put it right, because we are not very comfortable taking criticism, So we have to learn to criticize each other's work and learn from it and then take it forward. And instead of looking at criticism as something negative, if you look at it as a platform, where you learn and elevate yourself, and that would be probably the best way of taking it forward.
Definitely, definitely, sir. So the next question is to teachers. I think it's come from a teacher himself or herself. What do you think about the current education system? What do you think the current education system is missing, and how do you think we can fill this gap between practice and education?
I think what you showed before the presentation, no, I mean, I was very impressed with the way you said that students go out and actually build things themselves by hand, and I think that's a very, very good way of doing it. To feel the material, to feel strength of the material, uh, to uh, to see how it breaks, at what point it breaks, and the amount of efforts that get into just making a wall, because many times you have these wonderful craftsmen, skilled people who are doing some a wall, and then sometimes you go to the site and say that, oh, this wall has to be removed, because probably you have some larger reason for it. But when you look at that craftsman and see his face, that he has to remove the wall which he has built, you can feel that pain, I mean, because he would have taken so much efforts doing it, so much pain doing it. So one has to really understand that entire aspect of the process. So sorry, what I was talking about, what was the question? Yeah, about the education you're talking. Yeah, so by doing things is probably one of the most important things to do. Many times we would say that the buildings which are under construction, and when you have some of these visiting architects coming to the schools, if they take the students and show the way the building is coming up, including all services, how the sanitary pipes fit in, how the mechanical services fit in, and that is something which you find a gap when the students come out from the school and join the office. There seems to be that gap where the practical things which happen, how one thing is about the quality of drawing, where you where you know how to convert this into a proper working drawing format. And for us, the medium of communication is drawing, because what you send to the site for construction is not in the form of a written paper or something. These are drawings which you through which you communicate to the site for construction. So you have to master that art of conveying the information through drawings, and how efficiently you can do it without missing out the information. And you have to imagine the person who is reading that drawing and converting that drawing into the real work. He should be absolutely clear about it. He should not have any doubts. He should not be asking questions after reading the drawing. And if the quality of drawings is as good as that, then that the transfer of information from the office to the site becomes much more easier. And this is what the student has to learn, to understand that how do you communicate, how do you understand spaces, how do you understand the strength of every material, and how you put them together, knowing strength and weakness of every material, and how do you skillfully put it together to make a great work.
Yes, definitely. They need to definitely feel it with their own hands. If we don't build it, how do we know exactly how to build it? So it's relevant, very relevant, sir. And thank you for adding that. But we also insist on this to be a part of the curriculum. And like you said, this gap that we feel the practices are facing. How do you think practices can contribute to education, sir? Like institutions are also doing their best in many ways. But how do you think practices can contribute? This is something that the institutions definitely should contribute. But what do you think practices can do? Because they are at the receiving end of this, good or bad of this problem. They're the ones who are going to be at the end of it. So what do you think practices should do, young or old practices?
Yeah, no, as I said, it's very, very important to have these site visits during the construction. And I think every practicing architects, when some interesting project comes where you have some innovative construction technique, or anything which is used in a very creative way, you should actually invite students, collaborate with some of the schools, and take that group of students, explain them the thing, and what you would learn during those site visits would be quite a bit, because there on the site you see the drawings getting converted into it. So you have to see the drawings on the site, and then see how that work is referring to, how the site engineer refers to the drawings and then makes it happen. So those are the things which one has to sort of understand, and that would make it much better.
Yeah, true. There's going to be just two more questions, sir, due to we've come to the end of the session.
Yeah.
This question was quite exciting for us, so we put it right, in the end. So what were the difficulties you faced in architecture as a student? So I think this is definitely also come from students. So was there any difficulties, and what were the difficulties you faced?
Yeah, a lot of difficulties. First of all, I studied in Marathi medium. So coming from vernacular medium school to the college, so the first year was a bit difficult in terms of understanding some of the, purely the language part of it. So that was big problem. But I think what there's something which all of us tend to learn over the time. Now, I grew up in a almost like in Bombay chawl-like situation, where you have this about 200 square feet of place and then one large veranda in front. So you sort of grow up in that small community. I mean, you have so much, the entire that entire chawl, all neighbors are almost part of your family. And then you come to the college and you start designing very different kind of typologies and all. today we are designing, some of the houses which are probably 20,000 square feet and 30,000 square feet. And then you imagine yourself growing up in 200 square feet house. And then, so you have to train yourself to imagine, in different situations. And so that's what is a wonderful part of, students' education, where whatever your upbringing might be, you have to sort of imagine being a rich man, imagine being in a very large space, and try to sort of learn to design those spaces, to experience those spaces. So you find that difficulty as a student initially, that how do you visualize certain things which you would not have experienced during your upbringing. So that's the reason one has to travel a lot, one has to see a lot. It's about way of seeing. I think this is what probably is the most important thing for us as any designer, not just architect. The way you look at things and absorb, what you really need to absorb from that, and that's how you tend to learn. So for me, if you say what more difficulties, I can't I can't think about it. But every I mean, you should look at it more like a challenge than a difficulty, because you learn so much when you have these constraints, and you tend to learn much faster because of it.
No, definitely, sir. Thank you, sir. I think the students would have definitely got their answer. So it always, looks very, very at the current space that an architect like you who's proved himself isn't definitely the backstory is always something that we don't get to know and really understand. It has been difficult. We didn't know that language is actually something many students who are listening to this could be from a Tamil medium background, could be from their own regional language background, and find it difficult in the first year. So it is actually definitely motivational and inspirational for us to listen to this. And I think, like you said, every difficulty should be looked at as a challenge. So, and I think the question is answered quite well. Everyone faces difficulties. So I'm going to finish with the last question, sir, because due to the lack of time, it's a trick question. Which is a more difficult job, practice or teaching? And the remaining part is, as a teacher, what will be your words of advice to the young teachers who are shaping the next generation? But let me stick to the first part. Which is more difficult in your opinion, sir? Do you think architectural practice or teaching?
I haven't taught much, so I can say teaching is the most difficult thing. And I mean, it's I'm sure that a great teacher, I mean, you might create probably the most wonderful school, but if you don't have a great teacher within that, that great school can't teach you enough as much as that one great teacher would teach you. So the role of a teacher is always greater than anything else. I mean, that's something which you don't have to even argue about, because I mean, all our Sanskrit slokas and all says after mother and father, it is a guru who comes next. And it actually does make a difference to, would have made a difference to all of us, because some of the basic things that you learn, and even after so many years, you keep going back to some of your teachers, and back in the sense what they spoke about, or so that you keep remembering those references all throughout your life. So the role of a teacher is absolutely important. The second part is what about?
As a teacher, what would be your words of advice to young teachers who are shaping the next generation?
Well, I mean, you are learning all the time. I mean, I don't think so that the moment you have finished I mean, 5 years of education, you are through. Your learning keeps happening all the time, and you have to be that way, humble and like a sponge, absorbing everything all the time. And that's only way to sort of create something great. I mean, Mr. Doshi had come to Bangalore about 2 years back, and some of us were talking about his influence on us from different generations. Even younger to me, even older to me, and all. Some 4 of us spoke about it. But even in that lecture, he was sitting on the first row and taking down notes. And that's what something, I mean, that's the quality of a great teacher and great learner, I feel. Because even at that time, if somebody was talking about him, about his greatness, and he was taking notes about that, and he wanted to learn about from that as well. And that's something which is absolutely ultimate. At the age of more than 90s, he still wants to be one of the, great learners, and that's why he's a great teacher as well. So, so that is, I think, probably the greatest quality which each one of us have to absorb, to be a student all the time.
Fantastic, sir. Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think that was a really nice way to, the last question to rest as well. And all of us are very, very happy and we are excited. And thank you for spending your time with us today, sir. I hope the session was interesting for you as well and the conversation.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I enjoyed being the way you conducted it.
Yes, sir. And I would also thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I would like to invite you to our Center for Design if anytime you come to Chennai, so that it will be an even more pleasure, an honor to also have you at our campus sometime.
Thank you.
And we've come to the end of the. Yes, sir. Sorry, and the internet. So we have come to the end of episode 12 of Future of Architecture 2021, and actually we've given it a very fitting end with Sanjay Mohe, sir. So I would like to thank all the participants, all the architects, teachers, and I'm very sure this entire program of this 12 talks would have been very inspirational. I'd like to thank sir and all the other made the presence here. So thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
thank you all.
Pleasure. Thanks.